Welcome Congressman Rick Crawford from the House Intelligence, along with National Taxpayers Union EVP Brandon Arnold. Good to see you both. Thank you very much for being here. Congressman, that is just one of the cost doublings that we've had in terms of inflation in this country. Of course, food is in many cases doubled or even tripled. Many things are going up, but that gas price we thought was particularly interesting because a $2,200 increase in the cost of just living is extraordinary in this country, and most Americans can't afford it.
Yeah, I think the two most important indicators in inflation are gas and food, and the two of them are inextricably linked. And so when you're paying more at the pump, get ready to pay more at the grocery store. And here in Jonesboro, Arkansas, where I live, $4.06 a gallon this morning, the cheapest I could find it. And guess what? A gallon of gas was $4. Or a gallon of milk was $4.06 as well. So these things are tied together. And when you're hitting taxpayers hard with high grocery bills, and then on top of that, high gas bills, it's a recipe for economic disaster.
And Brandon, there's really a question here, a very deep question about whether or not this particular administration really cares about the rising gas prices, or in fact, maybe in which some of them are actually rooting on higher gas prices. We had an extraordinary exchange with Senator Manchin and the Secretary of the Interior last Thursday. I saw it on Kudlow. He got it first, but I think it deserves repeating as often as possible because it's really extraordinary about whether or not the Interior Department is actually cutting off all new drilling. Take a listen and I'll get your reaction. Roll tape.
If I may, real quickly, Secretary Helen, I don't know, did you all just put out a statement? The U.S. Department of Interior just put out a statement. And the statement basically says a proposed program is not a decision to issue specific leases or to authorize any drilling or development. This is from y'all's office. So it looks like you are on to shut everything down. Did you know you all put this out?
I am sorry. I am sitting in this hearing and not.
My God, somebody, it shuts it down. It shows what your intent is.
All she could say was, "I'm sorry. I'm sitting in the hearing." I mean, clearly that was a statement put out by the Interior Department, and it looks like their intent is to shut off all drilling, knowing that's just going to increase our shortage of oil.
Yeah, I mean, that's infuriating. I was filling up my tank just yesterday, and there was a woman whose bill came to over $100, and she said she couldn't afford to drive to work anymore. She was almost in tears, and yet we have an Interior Department that is trying to raise royalty payments, make it more expensive to get oil and gas out of the ground. It's revoked a number of leases that were existing in the Gulf of Mexico and on Alaska. This isn't stuff that happened multiple years ago. This is stuff that's happening over recent weeks, despite the fact that we're paying well over $4 per gallon of gasoline across the country. It's unbelievable.
Congressman Haaland, this may lead to the Democrats losing control of both houses of Congress. If it does, I mean, thank God we have Senator Manchin. He's a Democrat that cares about energy independence, that realizes that the less independence we have at home makes us vulnerable to all kinds of shenanigans by those people who now have power over us, like the Saudis, like the Russians, like other people that we don't really care about, our adversaries. But if you, in fact, win control of one or both houses of Congress, would you take Secretary of the Interior Haaland into the room and really try to get information about what they are trying to do, what their plans are in terms of drilling in this country and getting more or less oil?
Well, I can tell you it's a safe bet that the Energy and Commerce Committee will immediately have hearings to do just that. And I would also expect that Oversight and Government Reform Committee would want to weigh in on this as well, because you just can't continue with these kinds of policies, the damage that's going on to our economy and how this is impacting everyday folks and hitting them so hard in the wallet. It just can't continue like this. And so that'll be a priority for us in the next Congress.
And Brandon, we simply don't have the technology or the energy grids, for that sake, to make an immediate transition to electric cars or to make immediate transition to solar and wind as powering our electrical grids. I mean, it's just going to lead to enormous blackouts throughout the country if that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But we see policies coming out of this administration like increasing the tax credit for electric vehicles. Listen, I think Teslas and Rivians and all of these cool cars are really neat, but we don't have a sustainable infrastructure for them right now. average, everyday Americans are reliant on normal cars, gasoline-powered cars. And just because we want to get to somewhere in the future doesn't mean that we can do so right away. We can't flip a switch and go to this dream economy of Biden's. We're in the real world now. We need policies that reflect that.
And Congressman, we're relying on people that aren't doing what we want them to do. The Saudi Arabians just announced today that they are going to be working with the Russians in order to continue the same amount of oil production in the world, which means that prices will remain high. We lost our leverage with the Saudis because of the fact that we were going for this ridiculous Iran deal again. We could talk about that in a separate segment, but the bottom line is they're more afraid of the Iranians than we are. And because of that, I think we're pushing them in the arms of the Russians.
Well, we have regulated ourselves into a state of dependence, and it's gotten progressively worse over the last 16 months under the Biden administration. And you can understand why the Saudis would feel the way they do, but it's unfortunate that we haven't shorn that up. But we could correct this problem very quickly by just relying on our own domestic capability and increasing our capacity and becoming energy independent like we were under the previous administration.
I think you're absolutely right. Actually, I interviewed Donald Trump a couple of months ago. He said the same thing, that the whole problem that we're in, the economic fix that we're in, could be solved pretty quickly just by getting back to energy independence. He thought it was like 60 to 70% of the inflation problem was that. But then there's a question of how close we are to a recession. There was a guy named David Sachs. He's a terrific entrepreneur, a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley. He was on with Maria Bartiromo last week. And Brandon, here's what he said about whether or not we're sliding into a recession. Roll tape.
From where I sit, the market is really semi-frozen. And this is, again, the worst downturn since the dot-com crash. And it looks to me like we're headed into a very serious recession.
Do you agree with him, Brendan?
I think we're all concerned about that right now. And listen, I think if this administration's policies pass, if we see massive trillion-dollar tax increases on corporations right now, which are, for some reason, his answer to reducing inflation, if we see those adopted into law, then yeah, absolutely, we could be tipped into into a recession. But right now, consumer prices remain strong. How long consumer demand remains strong? How long consumer demand can keep up in this inflationary economy is a huge, huge question. If we do see consumer spending start to taper off, start to fall, we're in a real dangerous place.
Congressman, we've already had one quarter of a downturn, another quarter of a downturn, and that's the technical definition, or at least one of them, of a recession. Do you think we're actually in one now?
Well, I'm not a doom and gloom guy, so I'm not going to say we're in a recession yet. But what I am concerned about is the combination of inflation and a recession that gets us to a 70-style stagflation that would really be devastating to our economy.
It would indeed. Congressman Rick Crawford, Brandon Arnold, good to see you both. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. So our third world-style baby formula shortage continuing to get worse, despite the White House bragging about flying in a shipment.